The wind howled across the lonely desert, pushing sand against the metal walls of the outpost. It was midnight. The stars were sharp and cold. Inside the small cabin, Jason sat near a heater, eating from a ration pack. He had just returned from a delivery run, and he wanted nothing but sleep. Then he heard a soft sound, almost like a whisper. He paused. Was it just the wind again? But no, there it was. A knock, very quiet, like someone was afraid to knock too loud. Jason stood up. Slowly, he reached for the small laser pistol by the wall. No one came to this part of the desert unless they were desperate or dangerous. He moved to the door, his boots silent on the floor, and looked through the peephole. A woman stood outside. She was not human. Her skin was pale violet, her long hair tangled and dusty. She wore thin torn cloth and no shoes. In her arms was a small child, also alien, wrapped in what looked like an old blanket. Jason hesitated. He unlocked the first latch but kept the second tight. The woman raised her eyes. They were large, shining in the moonlight. Her voice was shaky. "Please," she said, "if you don't want us, we will go. Just let her warm up for 1 hour, then we leave." Jason didn't answer right away. He stared at the child. She was shaking. Her tiny fingers were blue from cold. The desert nights could kill. He opened the door, just a little, enough to let them feel the heat. The woman took one small step forward, but waited. Jason looked at them again, then sighed and opened it wider. "Get inside, but no tricks," he said, motioning with his hand. The woman nodded quickly. Thank you, thank you." She stepped inside, holding the child close to her chest. Jason locked the door behind them. The woman crouched near the heater, not sitting, just keeping her child close to the warmth. "I'm Jason," he said quietly. "Who are you?" "My name is Leora. This is my daughter Saya," she replied, her voice shaking from more than just the cold. Jason sat on the other side of the room, gun still in hand. He didn't aim it, but he didn't put it away either. "Happened to you?" he asked. "We were taken. My village was attacked 3 nights ago. Raiders. They burned everything. Some were killed, others taken to be sold," Leora whispered. Jason frowned. He had heard rumors. Slavers were growing bold again. They didn't care if their targets were human or alien. "I escaped with her," Leora continued. "We walked all night, hid during the day. I heard a human lived near the rocks. I hoped." Jason stared at her. "You walked here through the canyon. That's 10 kilometers of open sand. I had no choice." The child let out a soft cough. Jason's eyes shifted to her. "She's sick." "Yes," Leora said. "The smoke from the fire." Jason stood and walked to a cabinet. He took out a small medical scanner and a water pouch. "Give her this," he said, tossing the pouch gently. Leora caught it and helped Saya drink. The little girl's lips barely moved. Her eyes were half closed. Jason powered the scanner. "May I?" Leora looked scared, but then nodded. Jason knelt beside them, scanned the girl. The screen blinked. "She's got ash in her lungs. Not too deep, but it's dangerous. She needs medicine." "I don't want to hurt her more," Leora said, pulling her daughter closer. Jason held out a small capsule. "It's human-made, but safe for most species. It clears lungs. Trust me or don't. It's your choice." Leora looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. Jason crushed the capsule into warm water and helped her feed it to the girl. "She sleep better now," he said. Leora whispered, "Thank you." Jason sat down again, staring at the heater. Silence filled the room, just the wind outside and the faint wheeze of the sleeping child. "You can stay tonight," Jason said. "Leave in the morning." Leora's head dropped in relief. Yes, that is more than enough. But in his mind, Jason wasn't sure. He didn't trust strangers easily. Yet something about the child so quiet, so hurt, had shaken something inside him. He remembered his sister, lost during a raid 5 years ago. She had been around the same age. He looked at his door again. The wind howled louder now. Tracks in the sand were already gone. Jason stood up once more, went to the heater, and dropped a fresh thermal blanket next to them. "If you're going to sleep here," he said, "use this. I won't have a kid freezing in my house." Leora's lips trembled. "You're kind." "No," Jason said. "I'm just tired of seeing people left outside to die." He looked out the window one last time before locking it tight. The desert was dark, and danger was still out there. But for now, at least for one night, the door was open. The first rays of sunlight crawled over the desert hills, brushing against the metal roof of Jason's outpost. Inside the cabin, the silence was heavy. Jason stood near the window, eyes locked on the endless sand. His fingers tightened around a mug of rehydrated coffee that had gone cold. Behind him, Leora slept sitting upright, arms wrapped around her daughter. The little girl Saya no longer coughed. Her small body rose and fell gently, a faint trace of color returning to her cheeks. Jason didn't wake them. He just watched. But when the wind shifted and a strange scent drifted in burnt oil and scorched dust, his back stiffened. That wasn't a normal desert smell. Raiders had been through here recently, maybe even last night. He walked over to a storage locker and opened it slowly. Inside, his old security gear was still folded. Armor vests, thermal boots, and a basic stun rifle with one charged cell. He had worn this gear 5 years ago, back when he worked convoy runs across the border zones. The same job where he lost his sister during a raid. He hadn't picked up the rifle since. "Where are we?" a soft voice asked. He turned. Leora was awake, her eyes watching him carefully. "You're in Sector 11, Outpost 9, Jason said. "The raiders didn't come this way last night, but they might circle back." Leora looked around. "You live here alone?" "Yes, and I like it that way," Jason answered, walking to the window again. "But you let us in." Jason didn't. Reply. Sia stirred and sat up. Her eyes opened slowly, and her lips cracked into a small smile as she looked at her mother. Leora kissed her forehead gently, her hands trembling with relief. "She needs food," Jason said. "Real food." "I have some dried roots in my pack," Leora replied. Jason opened another cabinet and pulled out 2 ration bars. "These are better." He handed them over and turned to the bioscanner on his desk. It was still running a deeper scan of Sile's lungs. The results now showed something strange. Jason's eyes narrowed. The burn marks on the girl's lungs didn't match normal fire exposure. They had a signature plasma weapon residue, the kind used by black market bounty hunters, not raiders, not pirates. "She was hit by a pulse weapon," Jason said. Leora's hand froze in midair. "No, that's not possible. I know what I'm reading. The scanner doesn't lie." Leora's face turned pale. She set down the ration bar slowly. Jason stepped closer. "What aren't you telling me?" She looked at the child, then back at him. "There's a price on my head," she whispered. "Not because I did something wrong, because I saw something I wasn't supposed to." "What did you see?" She hesitated. "A shipment of illegal weapons being traded between the raiders and someone high up in the planetary security force. I was a translator. I understood their codes. When they realized I could expose them, they destroyed my colony." Jason felt a chill run through him. Not from the cold, but from the weight of what she just said. "And now they're hunting you," he said. She nodded. "I tried to hide, but someone must have tracked our movement. I think we were followed here." Jason cursed under his breath. "That explains the smell. They were nearby." He turned back to the scanner, quickly pulling out the data chip. "If what you're saying is true, we can't stay here. They'll burn this whole place down to silence you." "I'll leave," Leora said quickly. "Don't risk yourself. I've caused too much trouble." Jason didn't answer at first. He walked to the door and opened it slightly, looking at the sand tracks, faint but fresh. He shut the door again and bolted it tight. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "You wouldn't last an hour out there without help, and your daughter, she wouldn't make it." Leora sat down again. "Silent, I know a place," Jason said. "A smuggler's tunnel in the canyons. Old mining path. If we make it there, we can lose them. After that, I'll contact the border garrison." Leora looked up. "Why would you do this for us?" Jason stared at the child. "Because 5 years ago no one helped my sister. She died alone in the sand. I won't let it happen again." He walked to his gear locker, pulled out another blanket, and covered the little girl carefully. "We move at dusk," he said. "But what if they come back before then?" Jason looked at his rifle, then out the window again. "Then we make sure they regret it." The desert wind was calm now, but something felt wrong. Jason crouched near the edge of his cabin, brushing his hand across the soft layer of sand outside the door. There, half covered by the breeze, were boot prints, fresh, sharp, and deep. Not his, not Leora's. Someone had been here, watching them. He stood slowly, scanning the horizon. The rising sun painted everything orange, but there were no figures in sight. Still, he knew what he saw. He had lived out here long enough to read the sand like paper. Inside the cabin, Leora packed what little she had: an old canteen, a roll of cloth, and the data crystal hidden in her belt. Sia was awake again, lying on Jason's cot, her tiny face still pale, but her breathing easier. Jason came back in, locking the door behind him. "We're being watched," he said flatly. Leora froze. Now he nodded. "Someone walked around the cabin while we slept. The wind covered most of the prints, but not all." Leora moved to her daughter protectively. "Then we can't wait till dusk." Jason grabbed his bag. "I've already loaded the sled. We leave now." "But what if they catch us in daylight?" she asked. Jason looked at her. "I'd rather deal with sunburn than a plasma bolt." He helped her wrap Sia tightly in a thermal sling and placed her gently on his back. The girl clung to him weakly. Jason handed Leora a small stun flare, just in case they got separated. Minutes later, the door creaked open, and the three stepped out into the silent sand. Jason didn't follow the normal trail. Instead, he led them behind the ridge, across rough rocks and dry riverbeds. It was slower, but harder to track. He knew these routes from his smuggling days, routes he never thought he'd walk again. By midday, they reached the edge of Blackthorn Canyon. Liora looked down at the deep gorge. "We're going in there." Jason nodded. "There's an old tunnel halfway through. We hide there. If we reach it, we have a chance." The sled hovered quietly behind them, powered low to avoid heat signals. Jason moved ahead, checking for traps or signs of movement. But the canyon echoed back nothing, only wind, only silence. Halfway down the rocky path, Sia stirred and whispered something. Leora leaned close. "What is it, love?" She said she saw a red light behind us, Leora translated, her voice shaking. Jason spun around, raising his scope. For 1 second, he saw it too, a brief red flicker in the distance. Then gone. "That's a marker beam," Jason said. "They're flagging our path. We're being hunted." He increased speed. "We need to reach the tunnel now." The terrain grew worse. The rocks were sharp, the turns narrow. Twice, the sled scraped against the canyon wall. Saya cried softly, in the sling, too tired to scream. Then Leora slipped. Her foot hit loose gravel, and she tumbled to her knees, slicing her palm open on a jagged stone. Jason ran back to her. "You okay?" She held up her hand, blood dripping fast. Jason pulled a wrap from his pouch and tied it tight. "I can keep going," she said quickly, even though her lips were trembling. Jason didn't argue. They had no time. Just then, from high above, they heard the echo of an engine low, distant, but real. Then another. Not one vehicle. Not two more. "They found us," Jason said. "We don't make it to the tunnel in 5 minutes. We're done." He turned sharply at the next bend, and there it was, the tunnel entrance, a narrow break in the canyon wall, half covered by hanging roots and dust. He rushed forward, pulling the vines aside. Inside it was dark and cold. The walls were made of old metal and stone, from a forgotten mining route. They stepped in, shadows swallowing them whole. Jason turned and sprayed a camouflage gel over the entrance. From outside it looked like just another canyon wall now. Crouched inside, breathing hard. "Do you think they saw us come in?" Leora asked. "I don't know," Jason replied. "But if they scan close, they'll smell heat signatures. We can't stay here long." From his pack, Jason pulled a heat blanket, large enough to cover them all. It masked their presence from most cheap sensors. They huddled beneath it, silent, for several minutes. Nothing. Then they heard it. Boots crunching on rock. Voices, alien language, slurred laughter. "They think they've cornered us," Jason whispered. "They're close." He reached into his belt and pulled out a signal scrambler. "If the use comes inside the tunnel, this will fry their gear. But we'll have to move as soon as they pass." Leora looked at him. "Where will we go?" Jason tightened the sling across his back, feeling Sile's heartbeat against his spine. "There's a garrison 3 hours west. If we reach it, we live." Outside the tunnel, footsteps stopped. Then a voice called in broken English. "We know. You're here. Give us the girl, and we let you walk." Leora's breath caught in her throat. Jason looked at her. Then at the entrance he didn't move. He didn't speak. He just waited, his finger ready on the scrambler switch. And in the shadows, dust fell from above. Proof someone had just stepped into the tunnel. The tunnel air felt like ice against Jason's skin. He crouched next to a rusted support beam, listening for the intruders. Dust still drifted from the ceiling, showing that someone heavy had just stepped inside. Leora pressed her back to the cold wall, holding her bleeding hand near her chest. Saya stayed quiet in the sling, but her small fingers clutched Jason's jacket with surprising strength. Outside the entrance, the raiders repeated their demand in broken English. "Give us the girl, and you stay alive." The words echoed down the tunnel, bouncing off metal and stone. Jason breathed slowly, counting the time between each echo. He guessed 3, maybe 4 raiders in front and more waiting outside. His signal scrambler rested in his palm. One button press would overload cheap radios, blind basic drones, and send false echoes along the canyon. It would also reveal his hiding spot if he used it too early. He waited, scanning faint green lights on the scrambler's side. Battery full. Charge. Stable. Good. Patience was his ally. The first raider's silhouette appeared in the faint daylight behind the vines. He carried a stubby plasma carbine, barrel glowing dull blue. A visor hid his eyes, but Jason recognized the square shoulders and heavy boots. Professional muscle. Not simple thieves. Jason signaled Leora with 2 fingers. She nodded and covered Sile's ears. Jason flicked the scrambler switch. A silent pulse raced through the tunnel. Instantly, the raider's visor and rifle lights flickered, then died. The man cursed in his native tongue, banging the side of his helmet. Jason used the confusion. He sprang forward and slammed the butt of his stun rifle into the raider's jaw. The man dropped without a sound. Jason dragged the heavy body deeper, into the tunnel, hiding it behind a broken support beam. But the pulse warned the others. Outside, an angry shout rose. 2 more raiders pushed past the vines, weapons ready. One carried a shock baton crackling with blue sparks. The other lifted a long-range scanner, searching for heat signatures. Jason rolled a small flare down the tunnel floor. It rested behind a rock pile and burst into harsh white light. The flare burned hot, masking the heat of 3 bodies under the blanket. The scanner locked onto the flare instead. The raider fired a burst. Plasma bolts hissed, shattering rock and sparking against metal. The smell of scorched dust filled the air. Leora knew her moment. She slipped behind a thick column and pulled out her woven energy net. The net looked like simple rope, but each strand held a filament that could shock and bind. She cast it wide. The weighted edges sliced through the air and wrapped around the scanner raider's weapon hand. He screamed as the current jolted him, muscles locking tight. The weapon clattered to the ground. Leora yanked hard, dragging him off balance. The man with the shock baton charged toward her. Jason lunged from the side, blocking the baton with his rifle stock. The baton sparked near his face, heat singing his cheek. He twisted, grabbed the attacker's wrist and rammed him against the wall. The baton dropped. Jason pressed his rifle muzzle to the raider's ribcage and fired a non-lethal pulse. Blue rings rippled across the man's armor. He collapsed, unconscious but alive. For a moment only the flare hissed. Jason and Leora breathed hard, eyes darting toward the entrance. Outside, engines roared like scout bikes circling, searching for a path down. Any second more raiders would pour in. Time to run, Jason said. Leora collected the net, untangling strands from the stunned raider. Jason grabbed the 2 rifles on the ground and slung them over his shoulder. He checked Saya. The girl's eyes were wide, but she made no sound. Brave kid. They moved deeper into the tunnel. The path sloped down, then split into 2 forks. Jason took the left, remembering an old map scratched into an outpost wall years ago. The left path should lead to an abandoned elevator shaft, and then a service exit on the far side of the canyon. The right fork looped back toward the surface, a dead end if the raiders blocked it. As they hurried, Jason sprinkled fine powder called ash mixed with metal flakes behind them. The mix would confuse the raiders' senses and dogs, if they used any. Each step felt heavier than the last. His cheek still burned from the baton spark, but he ignored it. After 10 minutes they reached the elevator shaft. A metal cage hung on thick cables, half submerged in darkness. The power grid was long dead, but the manual crank still worked. Jason tested the crank rooster yet moving. Good. He helped Leora and Ciel into the cage, then stepped inside. He pulled the gate shut, locking it with a bent pin. Taking the crank handle, he pushed with steady rhythm. The cage creaked downward, chains rattling like old bones. Halfway down, distant shouts echoed from above. Raiders had found the fork and chosen the right path. Confusion bought them time, but not much. Jason kept turning the crank. Sweat dripped into his eyes. The cage reached the bottom platform. They climbed out into a chamber filled with broken machinery. A single passage led out. Jason grabbed a lantern from a shelf and shook it. The crystal inside still glowed faintly. Enough light to see. They hurried along the passage. Jason listened for footsteps above. Nothing yet. Maybe they had fooled the raiders completely. Maybe not. Ahead, faint moonlight shone through a crack in the rock face. They had reached the outer wall of the canyon. One more obstacle and they would be free of the tunnel maze. Jason placed Saya down gently and pulled a small thermite charge from his belt. He pressed it to the rock and set the timer for 5 seconds. Cover her ears, he told Liora. The charge ignited white heat. No loud bang, just a fierce hiss. The rock melted, leaving a hole big enough to crawl through. Cool night air rushed in. Stars glimmered above, and a thin crescent moon hung low, perfect light for escape. Jason peered outside. The canyon floor below lay empty, no bikes, no scouts. But engines still rumbled somewhere far behind, haunted echoes bouncing across the rocks. He helped Leora climb through, then lifted Saya. Finally, he crawled out, pulling his gear behind him. They slid down a short slope onto the sandy ground. Jason checked his compass. The garrison lay west, beyond 2 ridges. 3 hours on foot, maybe less if they kept a steady pace. He looked at Leora. Can you run? She tightened the cloth around her hand and nodded. For her, yes. Jason adjusted the sling, making sure Saya rested comfortably. He scanned the ridgetops for movement. Nothing yet. We move, he said. The 3 figures set off under the moon, leaving the shattered tunnel behind. The first clash was over, but the hunt had only begun. And somewhere in the shadows, the raiders regrouped, angry and eager for revenge. The sky was turning gray as the moon dipped behind the cliffs. Shadows stretched long across the canyon, hiding everything in silence. Jason led the way, each footstep careful and fast. His rifle was slung across his chest. The girl Saya was strapped to his back, her small body light as a whisper. Leo followed close, gripping a flare stick in one hand, her injured palm wrapped tight. They didn't speak. Every sound, every falling rock, every gust of wind felt like danger. Above them, the canyon walls rose like giant jaws, waiting to close. Jason kept his eyes on the path. The air was cold, but sweat rolled down his neck. He knew they were being hunted. The raiders would not stop. They had too much to lose. Leora carried a secret that could destroy their deals, expose the leaders, helping them in the dark. Suddenly, a flash of red lit the sky behind them. Jason stopped, a flare high and burning. That wasn't a signal for help. That was a mark. A beacon. The raiders were telling their team where the prey had gone. They're tracking us, Jason said quietly. Leora looked up, her face pale in the morning light. How they have drones. Maybe heat sensors. We're not fast enough on foot anymore. He turned and pointed to the dry canyon floor. There's an old rover buried under that sand ridge. I stashed it years ago, back when I was running smuggler routes. It might still work. Jason moved quickly, kneeling at a spot that looked like any other pile of rock and dust. He dug with both hands, Leora joining him, scooping dirt and sand away as fast as they could. After 10 minutes, something metallic glinted in the ground there, Jason said. He uncovered a camo tarp and yanked it off, revealing a compact hoverover. The tires were half buried and the control panel was dusty, but intact. He flipped the switch. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life. Jason didn't waste time. Get in. Leora climbed into the back seat and held Saya close. Jason gripped the controls and slammed the throttle forward. The rover lifted, then raced across the canyon floor, stirring up a cloud of dust behind them. But speed came with risk. Not far above, a scout drone blinked online. It caught the heat signature. It pinged a signal, and 5 kilometers away, the raider captain smiled. They're moving fast. One raider said, let them run. The captain replied, we'll pin them at the salt ridge. Back in the rover, Jason glanced at the rear display. They've spotted us. That flare was just bait. They're herding us toward a trap. Leora held on tighter. Can we change direction? No, too late, but I know the terrain will outthink them. The canyon narrowed, curving like a snake. Jagged cliffs loomed on both sides. Jason slowed slightly, navigating around boulders and fallen debris. A broken archway marked the edge of an old mining zone. He drove through it, wheels grinding on loose gravel. Suddenly, Leora gasped. There's something ahead. Jason saw it too, a blockade small made of scrap metal and concrete pieces, but enough to slow them. He didn't hesitate. He hit a switch on the dashboard, triggering a pulse from the rover's front coils. The blockade lit up in blue sparks and fell apart just in time. They burst through, shards flying past them. Behind them an engine roared. Jason looked in the mirror. 3 scout bikes, fast and sharp, were closing in. They had thinner builds, perfect for desert speed. One of them fired a bolt. It zipped past the rover and exploded against a rock wall. Leora grabbed a small rifle from the side panel and aimed. Wait for my mark, Jason said. He steered toward a rock tunnel ahead. The walls narrowed dangerously as they entered. Jason suddenly jerked the wheel, scraping the side of the rover against the canyon wall. Sparks flew. The scout bikes followed, too fast to adjust. The first one clipped a rock and flipped. The rider slammed into the wall and vanished in dust. The second passed through but slowed. The third fired again, this time grazing the back of the rover. Jason felt the heat but kept going now. He shouted. Leora turned and fired. Her shot hit the second rider in the leg. He screamed and crashed sideways. Only one remained. Jason twisted the wheel, exiting the tunnel into a wide, flat clearing. The ground shimmered salt dust, smooth and dangerous. Speed was riskier here, but it gave them a chance. I'm going to spin him out, Jason said. Hold on. He drove toward a rock ledge and braked hard, sliding the rover sideways. The scout bike followed but lost grip on the salt. It spun, slid, and slammed into a boulder. Silence returned. Jason let out a long breath and slowed the rover. Leora looked at him with wide eyes. That was insane. Jason gave a tired grin. Welcome to how I used to live. He checked the map. Garrison's just beyond that next ridge. We're close. Leora looked down at Saya. The child was asleep again, safe for now. Why do you keep helping us? She asked. Jason stared ahead at the rising sun. Because I finally have someone to protect again. And the rover moved on, carrying the last hope of a hunted mother, her brave child, and the man who refused to leave them behind. The wind was still. The rover stood parked under a low rocky overhang, hidden from view. Jason crouched nearby, checking the ridges through his binoculars. In the distance, the walls of the border garrison shimmered under the late morning sun. They were so close, less than 5 kilometers away, but Jason's eyes narrowed. Something didn't feel right. No patrols, no scanning drones, no beacon lights blinking from the towers. The garrison looked asleep, too quiet for a base that watched one of the galaxy's most dangerous trade routes. Leora joined him, holding Saya gently in her arms. The child was awake now, weak but breathing steady. We made it, Leora whispered. Jason didn't answer. He stood and walked to the rover, opened the panel under the seat, and pulled out a black cloth-wrapped case. Inside was a communicator, long-range, encrypted, old but powerful. He turned the dial and opened a frequency. This is Jason Vex. Outpost runner ID 9241. I'm requesting immediate contact with Commander Yaris at Border Garrison Delta. Pause. Then the reply came. Jason, this is Yaris. You're a long way from your zone. What's your situation? Jason exhaled. I have 2 civilians. One is a child. They're being hunted by armed raiders. We have proof of high-level deals between pirate factions and someone in security command. I need safe shelter. We're 30 minutes from your gates. Yaris was quiet for a moment. Then he said, understood. Gate 9 is open. Come in fast. We'll be waiting. Jason paused. Something in Yaris's voice felt cold. Flat copy, Jason replied. Then shut the channel. Leora noticed his hesitation. What is it? I know Yaris, he used to joke, curse, chew into every word like gravel. But just now, he sounded like a robot, Jason said. Could he be under threat? Or he's part of it? Leora's face turned pale. Jason paced. We can't risk the front gate. There's an old miner I knew who lived near this zone, Galen. He used to help smugglers. If he's still alive, he might have answers. Jason checked his tracker. His dig site's not far. Hidden in the cliffs north of the base. They drove again, silent, weaving through narrow paths, until they reached a collapsed shaft sealed by metal beams and overgrown brush. Jason climbed out and banged on one of the beams with his fist in a pattern. 5 taps, pause, 3 taps, long pause, 2 taps. Nothing. Then a click. A tiny hole opened. A dark eye stared through. Jason Vex, came a voice full of dust and memory. I thought you were dead. Jason smiled. Not yet. The wall opened, revealing a small tunnel, leading into a warm, underground chamber lit by yellow lamps. Tools and old machines lined the walls. In the center sat Galen, gray beard, mechanical arm, same sharp eyes. He looked at Leora and the child. So this is why you came back. Jason explained everything. The raid, the escape, the flare, the beacon, the silent garrison. When he mentioned Yaris and the communicator, Galen's face hardened. You were right to be suspicious. That base was bought out last year. Only a few good men left there now. Leora held out the crystal. This holds the evidence. Galen took it, plugged it into his scanner. Holograms lit the air shipment routes, voice logs, money transfers. Names blinked red. One name repeated twice, Commander Yaris. This will burn them all. Galen whispered, if you can get it to the capital system. Jason leaned forward. Then help us. Get us away off-world. Galen nodded. There's a tram line deep under this mine, sealed for years, but I kept the power running just in case. It leads to a private port. Suddenly, boom! A sharp explosion shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. Too late, Galen said. They tracked you here. Jason grabbed his rifle. Get the tram ready. I'll hold them off. No, Galen said. That tunnel's long. You'll need me to activate the doors. I'll send the charge forward. Buy you 15 minutes. After that, you're on your own. Jason looked at Leora. Go. Take her. Get that crystal to someone who can make it matter. Leora's lips trembled. Jason, he pressed the rifle into her hands. You protect her now, just like I did. Another blast echoed above. The metal beams groaned. Galen flipped a switch. A floor panel opened, revealing a narrow tunnel. With a tram car, Leora stepped inside, holding Saya tight. Jason hesitated at the top. What if I don't make it? You will, Leora whispered. You have to. The tram doors shut. The lights blinked green. Then it roared forward into the darkness, leaving behind the man who once lived alone, now standing between hunters and hope. The wind outside Galen's hideout howled louder now, carrying the smell of burning rock and plasma residue. Smoke drifted through the cracked beams above as Jason crouched near the entrance, his rifle steady, his breath slow and calm. He could already hear the sound of boots, many of them approaching fast from above, but the tram was gone. That was all that mattered. Underground, far from the crumbling mine, the tram raced through forgotten tunnels. Leora sat in silence, one arm wrapped around her sleeping daughter, the other gripping the crystal that held the truth. The metal walls blurred around her, lights flickering past, but her thoughts stayed behind with the man who stayed to fight, so she could run. Back in the mine, Jason took one last look at the dusty photo taped inside Galen's desk. An old crew, smiling in front of this very tunnel before the war changed everything. Jason smiled faintly, then flipped the desk over and dragged it to the blast door. He had traps set, motion mines, stun gas. Nothing fancy, but enough to slow them. The first explosion came fast. A raider stepped through the top hatch. Boom! He vanished in smoke. Screams followed. Jason ducked low and fired 2 precise shots. One raider fell. Another dropped his weapon and fled backward, yelling, but they kept coming. Galen, far down the side tunnel, triggered the second pulse charge. A deep hum shook the chamber, and more beams collapsed, blocking the side route. Jason moved again, using cover, firing slow and controlled. His cheek still burned from the last fight, but he ignored the pain. Then he heard a tough voice, loud, familiar. Jason Vex, came the call. You're outnumbered. Don't die for nothing. Commander Yaris stepped into the smoke, armored and calm. His helmet retracted, revealing a scarred face Jason hadn't seen in years. You betrayed your own. Jason growled. I made peace with reality, Yaris replied. We survive by choosing power, not dreams. Jason aimed his rifle. You chose cowards and I choose her. Yaris stepped forward. You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you. I've walked away before, Jason said. Not this time. Yaris raised his hand. Kill him. But before the soldiers could move, the final mine exploded near the support beams. Rocks crashed down, creating a barrier. Jason rolled behind the last wall, checked his power set. 1 shot left. He waited. Footsteps again. 1 soldier, maybe 2. Jason sprang up and fired. The last shot struck the ceiling. Rocks and dust rained down. Silence when the smoke cleared. The tunnel was empty. Jason was gone. Hours later, far across the drylands, a shuttle lifted from a hidden port. Inside sat Leora Sile, wrapped in a warm cloak, the crystal in a secure case. A kind pilot offered food, but she gently shook her head. As the stars grew larger through the window, she whispered, softly to her child. He stayed so we could live, and we will live well for him. 3 weeks passed. A new broadcast echoed across outer colonies. Hidden deals exposed, pirate leaders captured, security officers arrested. The name Jason Vex whispered in every station, every border world, every alley that once sold silence. For gold. In a small settlement built near the old canyon, a new shelter opened, made of stone, solar tiles, and steel walls. A single door stood at the front, painted red with a simple message scratched beside it. If you're cold, hungry, or hunted, this door stays open. And inside that shelter, sitting near a heater, was a man with a scar on his cheek, a rifle across his back, and a warm mug in his hand. Jason Vex had survived. He watched the door every night, waiting. One day, the knock came, gentle, familiar. Jason opened it. Leora stood there, her daughter holding a small flower. "We came home," she said. Jason stepped aside without a word. And just like that, a new chapter began, not in silence, not in hiding, but in hope, because this time, no one would sleep outside ever again.